chat about Maxwell Cornet in this video, but before I do, I want to touch on a couple of other players. That's a bad phrase. That's a bad phrase. I want to talk about a couple of other players as well, because there's a situation at West Ham whereby I do understand that players get annoyed with managers, particularly if you're not featuring in the team. However, there's a couple of players who, maybe even as many as 3 players, who would indicate they're not so much annoyed with David Moyes, they're annoyed with the club. And I'm talking about Nathan Gerd, I'm talking about Flynn Downs, I'm talking about Ben Johnson. We'll get to them in just a bit, because one person that I did think would probably just be annoyed with David Moyes was Maxwell Cornet. Now, I don't actually fully understand what happened here. We spent £17 million on the player from Burnley. He played really, really well for Burnley. Obviously, he'd played for Olympique Lyonnais before that, so he was known to a lot of the players at West Ham. Of course, I don't know whether his crossover time coincided with Paquetá and with Emerson. You know, maybe just Paquetá, maybe less so Emerson, but there was certainly enough pedigree there. There was one European game, if I remember correctly, where he absolutely tore Manchester City apart. I think my point is Cornet is a skillful player. He's an adept player. He's got attributes. You know, it's not like we paid 17 million and felt like we were overpaying them. It just looks, in hindsight, like a bad deal for 2 reasons. Number one, he had an injury which he took himself off to France and he got treatment rather than getting treatment in-house. He's not the only West Ham player to do that, though. I have to say that there are numerous West Ham players who have done that. And I think the other thing was, when he got back, he had found himself so out of favour with David Moyes, he never got back in. He never had a really fair crack at the whip. Even in the season that's just finished, at the time he came in, he came off the bench in one of the European games, did really, really well. And then I think he started and scored in the next one he played. And then even after that, even though he'd scored and assisted, he didn't really get any more chances. And even towards the end, when, you know, like a left winger was needed, even with Fornals going, look, I'm sure we'll all agree Fornals isn't a winger. That's not what I'm arguing. David Moyes thought he was, though. David Moyes would play him on the left wing. But even once Fornals and Benrahma had gone, there was still no way that Cornet was getting played. And even when he got to the end, he would choose George Earthy over him to play in that position. Listen, I was delighted to see George Earthy. I wouldn't have had that any other way. I think my point of the matter is, he was out of favour. So if there's anybody that would probably be rejoicing at David Moyes moving on, you'd think Maxwell Cornet would be high amongst them. Even somebody that was out of favour, Danny Ings, you got the impression Moyes liked him. Didn't use him, didn't rate him as a player within his system, but he gave him time. Even the last game of the season, you know, David Moyes brought him on. Which sort of goes back to the question of who bought the players. And I say that in the past tense rather than who buys the players, because I hope going forward all that's sorted out now. We don't have to worry about that sort of stuff anymore, because we've had it for a few years, haven't we, over at West Ham, that you didn't feel that everyone was pulling in the same direction in terms of which players were being bought. So, but, you know, historically, it makes you wonder. Benrahma is one of the obvious ones, of course. It makes you wonder who bought Cornet. I seem to remember back at the time we were after Keane Lewis Potter, didn't get him, and Cornet was like the backup guy. In fact, you could say that was the same with when we didn't get Abiri Eze. Didn't get Eze from QPR, and so in the end we went and got Benrahma. It was second choice. It was like Moyes didn't get his man, and I don't know if this is true or not, but then the club, maybe, I guess we can blame Rob Newman, can't we? Everyone else is at the moment. You know, somebody else decided they're going to buy this player, and David Moyes has never completely sold on them. So I wonder if that was the case with Maxwell Cornet, which leads me on to Julen Lopetegui. I don't even know if it is Julen, whatever it is, we'll find out soon enough. Probably know by now, actually, because I'm pre-recording this video, funny enough, so probably by the time that this video comes out, he's been announced and all that sort of thing. But I do wonder if there is a situation whereby Cornet gets a chance. Every new manager comes in, he likes to open it up to everybody and say, look, everyone's got a chance. Now, don't get me wrong, there are going to be some players who the manager is completely sure that is not fit for his system. So Lopetegui spent a lot of time watching West Ham, and he would have looked at it. Myself and Gio have done 2 videos, which you'll be seeing in the next few days, which are basically 3 players to thrive under Julen Lopetegui and 3 players we think will fail under him. And then there's this whole other group of players who sort of come into that middle ground, if you want. And I just wonder if Cornet is one of them, because I do feel that there is a situation whereby he can really impress. And those key components are pivotal. Now, the first thing that has to be, for this to work, the manager has to be honest in his words. So when he says everyone gets a chance, everyone joins up for pre-season, and everyone starts off as equals, I don't quite believe that. I don't think that will ever be the case, because there'll be people who he's looking forward to working with at West Ham, so they already have a bit of an advantage. But as long as more or less you are honest in what you're saying and you practice what you preach, then it does allow a situation whereby you've got pre-season training, you've got some pre-season games. That's an opportunity for some people to impress. So I just wonder if the situation is not dead for Maxwell Cornet. Does he have the skill and the technical ability to impress on a training ground? I think he probably does. Does he suit his system? Well, we hear it's either a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. The winger, the wide players, are a little bit more inside forwards rather than wingers. The width is there by the fullbacks. One thing I would say with Cornet, even though you'd probably primarily call him a winger, he is versatile. He's played at wing back before. He's played as a centre forward before. He's played as a number 10, and he's played on the wing. So I would suggest that gives him enough flexibility to maybe good enough to play in that system. I just wonder if he's somebody that might be a bench player, but a usable bench player. He's a bench player anyway. He's not even a player, is he? He's just a bench member. To be a player, you actually kick the football around. He doesn't do that. I do wonder. I do wonder if it's not completely closed off for him. And I hope it'd be nice to see it work out. Look, if it did work out and Cornet starts playing really, really well, then it doesn't particularly reflect well on Moyes. But you have this at every club. At every club, ever think about it now. Think about a club where a new manager's come in and a player that was previously out of favour all of a sudden starts to play regular football under the new manager. I bet almost every time, whoever started last season was brand new managers at Premier League clubs, I bet there's a player who came in from the cold, which is basically what we're saying. Just something I alluded to at the start of it. I am a slightly puzzled, truth be known, about Nyford and about Flynn Downs. What we're hearing about Flynn Downs is, and again, please excuse me if some of the information is a little bit late, so I'm sort of pre-recording this a couple of days before, but just because we expect other stuff to happen within that time. Nyford won't be swayed. Nyford wants to leave. So actually it wasn't about David Moyes. So even though a manager's coming in and suits his style of football, he's still not going to give it a go. He still wants to go. Now, look, if it's Saudi Pro League, it may well be that that's just down to money. It's not that he's annoyed with the club per se. But as we understand it, he's a nice guy. He's a likeable guy, apparently, Agurd. Everyone likes him. Everyone gets on with him. But he's got no intention of staying at the club. I think the dynamics are slightly different with Ben Johnson, because I do believe that 100%, I cannot tell you how much I believe this, that Ben Johnson, had he been offered some first-team assurances, not even guaranteed first team, but a little bit of a run in the first team, and a comparable wage of in and around between 40 and 50 grand a week, he'd have signed it. He'd have signed it at West Ham. That didn't want to be a top earner at all. I think the fact that the club have probably mucked him around so much, and I mean the club and the manager, that it just, and which is a shame for him. He's been at West Ham since he was 8. He loves West Ham, absolutely loves West Ham. If you're not seeing it, go back and watch him on Jack Mate's podcast. You know, that will tell you everything you know about Ben Johnson. You need to know about Ben Johnson. He's wonderful. And I interviewed Ricky Martin, a former academy director, and I interviewed him on our Patreon page, and I was talking about the Hong Kong Sevens tournament, which I watched all the games in the Hong Kong Sevens tournament. Johnson was amazing in it, and actually, when I was doing the interview with Ricky, I didn't realise he was in charge of that. So it was quite interesting interacting with him. No one's got a bad word to say about him that's worked with him. So I think that's a bit odd that despite the manager change, he's going. But again, slightly different ones. But the most odd of all of them is Flynn Downs. I always assumed that Flynn Downs' problem was just with David Moyes, but it appears it may well be with the club. Now, I'm happy to be proven wrong. In fact, I want to be proven wrong on this. But what you're hearing is he wants to stay at Southampton even if they weren't to get promoted. Well, I mean, you could understand it if they were. A promoted club saying, we're going to make you the main man. You're the main guy. When we get promoted in the Premier League, he gets to play centre stage. That I can understand him wanting to stay at Southampton. To insist on staying at Southampton if in the event of them staying in the Championship, that he must be really, really pissed off with West Ham. He must be. He's a West Ham fan, as I understand. I might have this wrong. I don't think I have. I think he's got either a house in Brentwood or business interests there. That's for sure. I don't believe he's got any ties to the South Coast in particular. He's an Essex boy. I don't get it. I find that quite baffling. That actually, that even a manager coming in who probably suits his style of football, Flynn, even that. So it just goes to show that maybe it's not all about David Moyes. You know, maybe it's quite difficult for a lot of these players to, be it contractually or for whatever reason, they've not massively enjoyed themselves at the club. I do hope it's changed. I think it probably has. I think with Lopetegui coming in, who is a schmoozer, he really is. There's no doubt about that. Whilst I think he does have the capacity to fall out with ownership. I think he's a real schmoozer with his players. His players seem to love him. Listen, again, he'll have fallouts, but in the main, his players seem to love him. With Tim Stuyton being there, Maximilian being there, and all the others as well. I do think that maybe the dynamic is probably going to change. Apparently, a couple of Lopetegui's coaches are really sort of are really, really fun, good guys, very popular. The training ground's meant to be a good place to be. He's a very big one, Lopetegui, on nights out and team bonding and stuff like that. And he apparently gives them little targets. So, you know, if you score 2 goals in this game, or you keep a clean sheet in the next game, or you do this or such and such, then we go out for a meal, or we go go-karting or something like that. He's that type of manager. So, I mean, it doesn't sound like it's a nasty place to work, and apparently his coaches are very involved in all of that. I'm not saying Moyes didn't do that stuff. I'm just telling it as it is, that I think that maybe some of these players might find that they enjoy being at West Ham more than they thought they would. Anyway, I'm just interested. Let me know what you think about Maxwell Cornet. I would hope his time's not done. We have so many players out of contract and leaving. I don't think we can afford to give up on everyone. And I think Maxwell Cornet he's still young enough. What is he, 20, 27, 28, something like that? Skillful, fast. Yeah, look, you know what? As a bench player with a manager that uses his substitutes, I think he could be a real asset.